Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's Strong Communities on Monday, the 24th of February. If we could go round and do introductions. So I'm County Councillor Lisa Dimmock for the Elms ND and Chair of Strong Communities.
I'm Hazel Eilert, the Council Scrutiny Manager.
Councillor Val Smith, Lambaddock Ward.
Jamie Trahan, member for Overmorning Ward Monmouth, a member of this committee.
Councillor, you don't want to go. Councillor Tony Easton, Dewsbury Ward, Caldecott.
Councillor Roger Harris, Cresson Ward, Abergavenny and Observing.
Thank you all. We're going to bring item 5, the update on street lighting, forward because these officers are ready. So I'll hand over to Carl now. Thank you.
Thank you for the invite and thank you for letting us go first with the report. So this is an update report on street lighting. It's not... Shouldn't be. Yeah, fine. So the report is on street lighting. There isn't any change planned in policy direction, and this report just sets out the progress so far and where we are and where we're going. Obviously facing a lot of challenges in both resources in street lighting, increasing costs in energy prices, and an ageing infrastructure across the county that we need to address. Obviously, my apologies for the report being late to get circulated. As you fully understand, last week was slightly difficult with the flooding in the county, so all of our services were prioritised to that. So the report got missed off my agenda slightly as well. So my apologies for it being late. I won't go right through the report. I know that members have had quite a few questions in the past regarding street lighting. So what we'd like to do, given that we have a shortened period of time for this report, is to go straight to questions. Obviously, Steve Harry and Gareth Sage are both here. They're two parts of a three-man team for street lighting, which will give you an idea of how much resource we've got across the county in dealing with all the street lighting concerns. So, yeah, happy to take questions, and I think probably Steve and Gareth will be able to do most of the answering on this one. Yeah.
Thank you, Carl. Just quickly, I whizzed past apologies. Have we had any apologies for today? None? Okay. So members, I'll hand over to you. I know there's quite a few questions. Who would like to go first? Councillor Eason?
Well, I'll try. There have been questions in my ward, as you're aware, of having lights kept on overnight because they're far and few between and some of the areas are quite dangerous. But I haven't fully had a chance to read this in depth. But are we going down the route of getting rid of the remote control system in the future and looking at a different way of running the lighting in the county? I understood that with the Harvard system, it'd be rather an expensive system to maintain. Now you've got LED lights and the ability to set them at certain levels of lighting when you require.
The Harvard system, I don't know if you're aware that the company has gone into liquidation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and another company is taking it over, but they can't maintain it quite as well as the other company.
Right.
But not all the lighting stock is on the Harvard system. So what we're doing is as and when we change or upgrade, we're moving away from the Harvard system.
You're moving away from the system.
Gradually, yes.
So how will that affect our budgeting for lighting in the future? We're obviously making savings by going to LED. Energy costs are going up. What is the quid pro quo in terms of the future then?
Well, obviously there's a cost implication of change when we upgrade to new LEDs, because some of the Harvard system wasn't LED and the majority of it wasn't. So when we upgrade, we then go into LED. Okay.
Can I answer, Chairman? In view of the fact that the one system has gone into administration, the folks who've taken over now, are they administering the same system or how are they amending it and improving it, hopefully?
They're not amending the system, they just, they maintain it so they'll be able to use it. But what they want us to do is to go on, move over to their system, which costs us more to an investment to carry on doing that.
So if I can follow on, you're moving on to another system.
No, they would like us to move on to another system.
They would like us, so what would be the benefits?
We haven't looked at going on to the system because of the reduction with the LED lights. The cost has come down on the energy use of them.
Right, so it's taken a bit of pressure off.
Yes, it has, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Dovey, you had a question?
I think to add some more to Gareth's point for Councillor Easton, the upgrading of the Harvard system through the LED system will allow us to have more control over the lighting, to allow more dimming, but it is an ongoing investment in a Salix loan. So as we make savings in the energy costs, we are repaying a Salix loan that we use to buy into that system. So at the moment there isn't, in quid pro quo terms, there isn't any money left over in this budget because it's all being used to furnish the loan repayment. The loan repayment is for over the next 15 years. So at the end of that repayment, providing that the infrastructure stays sound and we don't have to reinvest in the infrastructure, that's when we'll start to see savings coming out through the LED system.
Carl, sorry to put you on the spot, because they've received the report just before this meeting started. Are you able to just give a brief overview of the findings in it? Thank you.
So the report, the original report looked to turn the lights off for part night operation. That was what the original policy set out to do. At that time, it was running on, the majority were running on an Harvard system of lights. The LEDs were added at a later stage through this process. So it's a bit of a mixed batch out there at the moment. We've got some columns that are on the Harvard light system, Caldicot being one of the areas where we've had some problems with them. As we change over to LEDs, we are going on to the new dimming regime of the new LEDs. So it gives a, I can't remember all the figures, but it's 75% of lighting, but it stays on at 20% throughout the night.
After midnight,
Yeah. So it's not complete darkness where we're able to switch over to this new system, but a lot of the columns are still on the Harvard monitoring system, so it's just taking time. To change all of them is a big investment for the authority when we have to change them anyway. They don't last forever, so we're doing it on a more slower basis of changing it over. That's where we're going with this. As well as the lighting columns, obviously we manage traffic lights and all of the other things as well, and it's all aging infrastructure. So I wanted to use a report to highlight that it's not just the lighting columns that we're able to save some money on from the energy costs, but actually we need to start reinvesting in the infrastructure across the board. Some of the lighting columns, particularly around the Caldicot ward, run on aluminium cabling underground, and the aluminium cabling is starting to disintegrate. We go in and replace stretches of it, and then that knocks another area out. So we've had ongoing problems with that. Obviously, replacing all of that would be very expensive as well. So it's about reinvesting in the infrastructure we've got now as well, into what we can save going forward. the policy works well. We haven't had a huge number of claims against us for people, concerns originally of increased crime and people falling over in the dark. We haven't seen that yet. There's no correlation through the police reports that having lights on in an area decreases crime or vice versa. Where the police have highlighted issues, potential issues, the teams work closely with them, and in some areas we can pull lights back on for a shortened period of time if there's particular issues. Most of them issues are related to problems in the area rather than anything to do with street lighting, but if we can help with street lighting, that's what we've done. So we've taken a very pragmatic approach to delivering the policy as well, and we'll continue to. But as I said, when we move over to all the new LED system, the lights will be on throughout the night at a much lower rate from 12 till 6 in the morning. So that's the highlights of the report are captured there. Obviously there's more detail and costings and things in it that we're happy to take questions on. I do appreciate that you've received the report 30 minutes before the meeting, so yeah, my apologies.
Councillor Eason?
Yeah, thank you, Carl. I appreciate the problems we've had the last few weeks and this report coming to us as it is. I find that life needs to go on though. At the moment, the system is running blocks of 40 or 50 lights. Am I correct? For controlling, like if you control one light, you're controlling 40 or 50 in one block. Is that right?
On average, a node can do about 100 lights.
100 lights,
but
yeah.
They can all be independent. That's just the...
They can be independent,
yeah,
but...
that's just the hub. If you knock the hub off, then you've lost 100 lights.
Yeah.
But they can all do... You can program them all differently.
So how would the dimming system work when you're not using a control system?
They're all pre-programmed. So
the block is pre-programmed, in other words?
No, the individual lights.
The individual light,
Each one will go...
Through the sensor?
Through itself. You can change it, but obviously...
Yeah.
Once you install it, then it's going to cost money then to reprogram it. So you really need to get it right when you put them, before you put them in.
So in transition at the moment, which is a buzzword around the country, when would you expect to see a completion of this scheme, so that we're in a position where we know that the lights are going to be on across the county all the time, well, other than daylight, and dimmed at night? At the moment, it is a bit of a mixture. I made requests to you in Oakley Way, as you know, and we had a question mark about 6 lights, which I appreciate you having kept on for the reasons I gave you.
Yeah, well, we installing over the last year, we've installed in about 5,000 to 6,000 new LEDs, but then half are already LED. So obviously they will need to stay as they are, because they've got a life of, we think, in about 20 years on the actual lantern.
All right.
So they will stay as they are. It's just the new ones will be, what we will probably do is, because we've replaced, if an existing lantern fails, say in the street, we've replaced that with LED, and then we've come along now this year and haven't put the new ones in. We probably would change that one, or the controls on that one, to match the others at some point, but...
Okay, well, to avoid the pun of being in the dark a bit, I think this report is an interim report, and I think we'd like I was asking you to come back to us in this period of time with a fuller report of where we are, because I am a bit, not lost, but a bit vague as to where we exactly are in the scheme of things.
Yeah, I think it's the costings really. We need, on the long term, we need to work at the costings and what budgets we got to be able to do that. At the moment, we're just using the maintenance money besides the Salix loan that we've had. So it's really knowing how much money we've got to know how quickly we can change it all over. But we're trying to keep within budgets.
Are there any further questions from members? Councillor Dovey?
No, the Salix loan we took out, the interest-free loan we took out to convert this last 5,000 lamps units onto LED, the payments will take 16 years to repay.
Bearing in mind we've got equipment working at the moment, and we're installing like equipment, right? How long is it going to take to install this new phase of equipment?
To do the remaining LEDs, which are all the non-ornamental ones, because they're different again, the normal standard lanterns, all of them will be LED by the summer. But the first LEDs went in 5-6 years ago, and obviously they're not as efficient as the latest ones because they seem to be getting better and better all the time. So all the lanterns that are not non-ornamental will be done by this summer.
Okay, but the ones that aren't as good,
Yeah,
are we replacing those, or are they running on?
they're running on. I mean, we would be talking about probably another $1.5 million to change those.
And how much longer do we think that they will be useful? Is their term going to run out the same as the newer ones?
They say they're guaranteed for 10 years when they were put up, and hopefully they'll last a lot longer than that. But I mean, I'm sure some of them will fail, but they're guaranteed for 10 years.
So what monetary benefit can we see coming out of this at the end of the day? Are we going to see any monetary benefit out of it?
We've used the money savings by switching them to LED to pay for them.
Yeah.
For the loan.
Go on then.
But 1 year the energy went up 28%. The second year went up, I think it was 14%. So the energy seems to be going up as much as we can actually save. But if we did invest and convert them to LED, our energy bills would have gone up dramatically.
Okay, so, right,
Yeah,
if I got it right in my head, the fact that we need to do these new ones because the cost, we mightn't be making savings out of them, but we will be saving effectively because the others will be. Okay, so at the end of the day, we're not going to get any financial benefit out of it.
We would have if energy hadn't gone up, but it's gone up.
Yeah, but that was the point I was trying to get.
Yes,
It's going
yes,
up.
yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
I understand that. I think we ought to realise we're not going to get any
No.
pound notes in our back pocket anyway. Okay, thank you very much.
Just for me to add, because I understand where the questions are going on this, the LED lights that we replaced that went into the Arvad units, to replace all of the bulbs that we put in now with the programmable units on the new LEDs would cost us about another £210,000 to do. So that's what it would cost to have all of it running on the system that Councillor Eason would like, where the lights stay on all the time. We don't have that budgeted, but as these older units degrade and fall offline, we will be replacing them with the newer units that are programmable on each post. So that gives us wider benefit. What we don't have is it budgeted for replacing the older ones. So the older ones now seem less beneficial to us, but they are only 5 years old. That's how fast the technology moves forward in this. So we can't go round and replace all of those bulbs. We just have to wait and let them run their course, but when they have run their course, they'll be replaced with the newer, more modern ones, which potentially, at the time that they come, there'll be an even newer bulb on the market that we might be able to get even greater savings out of. So the savings that we make are being ploughed back into the Salix loan to repay that. Once that loan is repaid and the system is running, we won't see budget savings because the budget is the budget, but compared to what we would have been spending if we'd not done this in 5-10 years time, we would be spending considerably more on energy costs than we are now. So it's budget diversion rather than budget saving, if that makes sense.
Could I just ask one question, because it was in a way where I was trying to get with what I asked further. Firstly, if the technology is changing at the rate that it is, and we would want to take advantage of those savings, is there a way that we could address the way we budget for this that is more flexible, that, if you like, mimics the market or addresses the market more significantly? Because the market is changing under our feet, is it not? And are we changing the way we do our budgets for this? Is the budget system the same as it has been here too? Are we reacting to the market changes? That's basically, I'm saying, in a more apt way.
So,
Sorry to be a pain. I just want to understand.
That's okay, no problem at all, Councillor. The energy consumption for 2015-16 was around 3,300,000 kilowatts. We're now down to 2 million kilowatts. We have seen big savings in the amount of energy we are using, but over that same amount of time, the cost of the energy we use has gone up by almost 50%. So we're not seeing savings to reinvest. The cost of replacing the bulbs is not the bulb itself so much as the work taken to install it. So as the market moves forward and better lights come on and we buy better lights and install them, we would still only be doing that when the lamp is defunct, when it's broken and gone out, because otherwise it's too expensive. It's the cost of replacing rather than the cost of the bulb. So we are continually improving when new systems come onto the market. We're working with it, but we are not doing a whole-scale changing of all the systems because the market is continually evolving. So if we change now, it could be in 5 years' time that we'd need to change them all again. So we change the older bulbs to the most beneficial on the market at that point in time, rather than constantly updating every single lamp column every time there's a change in the market. So from a budget perspective, the budget is ever decreasing, as are all council budgets. So we're trying to manage in budget every year, and the more lights we get on this year, that will help us hold our position. But it's not budget saving in the sense of a cashable saving coming back to the authority, because those savings are being used to pay off the loan. And it's not just about money saving. A reduction of over 1 million kilowatt hours is good for the environment, is the right thing to do. You would do it in your own home, you would do it for the environment and the planet anyway. So it's not just about the monetary saving, it's bigger than that. But I understand the pressures that the council's under across the board. It would be lovely to be handing some of this money back as a cashable saving, and it's just not there at the moment.
Thank you for that.
Smith.
Yes, can I, Chairman? There's a rather remarkable statement in this under point 5.3. The adoption process for housing developments can take up to 10 years. And then, although fit for purpose when adopted, there is limited life left in the assets transferred. In particular, the lanterns are not LED, and the energy costs are high. And I think that is something that needs to be looked at very seriously. I find a 10-year adoption process incredible, but that you should have new build that's approved with not the best system, the best quality, seems to me wrong. And it's something the planning department need to look at seriously, because basically we're saying, okay, build a house, but you don't need to have the best system that's installed for that estate, and it's incurring additional cost for us because we're paying additional electricity charges for not the best system, and it does seem very strange. But the 10-year adoption absolutely amazed me.
It's maybe better for this, or it depends the way you look at it, because if they've run it for 10 years, then the developer's paying. But the thing is, when it's handed over to us, then it's obviously end of life, so we have to renew it all.
It is a pity, though, I feel, Chairman, that that's a rather negative attitude. It's okay if they're paying for it. Yes, we don't pick up the tab. I hadn't realised that. That didn't come through. But at the same time, looking to the future and the climate implications, you're having to manufacture more electricity to run the lights. So I think it's something that needs to be looked at hard and long, Chairman.
When the planning application was put in, the streetlight department at the time would have specified what units they wanted. They put in what was the latest units at that time. But it takes them so long to get the road adopted that, again, like I was saying, I'm saying 5 years ago we put in the newest, the oldest LED system, and everything's getting out of time. The problem is how long it takes to develop and to get things adopted. It's taking, I don't know why they're taking so long. It's not just the street lighting, it's the whole adoption of the highway as well.
Perhaps there's a question that we should be asking, Chairman, looking at why does it take 10 years to go through this process, which to me would seem a bit over the top.
I think it costs the developer money, and that's why they're not pushing to get it adopted.
Sorry, that's their problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't make them.
No, this is an interesting point. Thank you very much, Chairman.
30,000, you said.
Sorry?
How much money? 30,000.
On what, sorry?
What you said? You thought it cost, and that you quoted a cost.
No, there wasn't a quote. There wasn't a quote.
Oh, sorry, I misheard you. Apology. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? With regards to 5.6, it says only lanterns have been replaced under the LED upgrade. The lighting department have many assets that need to be maintained. Can you give a little bit more information on that and the cost and how we cover those costs?
Yes, but we were only replacing the lantern up the top, but obviously you've got a column as well, which, okay, they've got a long life of maybe, I don't know, 40 years, but people seem to think, right, we've replaced all the lights now to LEDs and they will last 20 years, so you can cut the budget, but obviously we still got to maintain the columns and also the cable. Where we've got new sites, we insist now that Western Power will cable directly to the column. But we've got a lot of, Monmouth has got a lot of their own cables, like in Caldecott, and depending how old they are, some are quite problematic, so that is quite a bit of a ticking time bomb, really. And we also look after the signals as well. And although there is savings, if you switch them to LED, it's minimal in the cost of the overall scheme. The typical life of some signals is 12 years, which means we should be doing about 3 to 4 sites every year, which we haven't been doing. Which means that I'm not sure, just before I started, I think there was a set of signals went down in Monmouth, and it took quite a while for them to repair it. Because it's a case of now some of the sites are that obsolete that if it breaks, you've got to rip it out and put a new site in. So it's, you know, you could have like a month's delay as opposed to maybe like max of a day, really. So that's quite an issue there as well. And we've also got bollards as well, and they tend to get hit quite regular, and that's quite a high cost to replace those as well. So it's, you know, the sort of energy is coming secondary, really, because once you've got those savings, you've got to start looking at the relative cost ends of your accidents. It goes up as well, because we don't seem to be able to claim effectively for lampposts that get knocked down, because by the time, you know, it's taken out, there's nobody around, and it's a flattened lamppost, and that could cost, you know, anywhere between, say, £2,000 upwards. And if we get in sort of, you know, 6 to 10 of those a year, it's quite a big cost on the budget as well.
So that's people not reporting them in when they've done it, just hitting it and
yeah, and when they are hit, it takes quite a while. That can take like 3 years maybe to get the cost back as well. So
Okay, thank you.
okay.
Councillor Eason?
Yes, come back to Councillor Smith's point. Closgate and Anthony Caldecott, or the old Brookside, they are LED lights on a new development, and it's due for adoption on the 23rd of March, I believe. But your predecessor, I'm sure that I saw a diagram of his where these lights are pre-numbered, ready to be taken over in the future. That'll be a 12-month. Yet on the other hand, there's a part of Caldecott and Castlereagh which hasn't been adopted for 20 years and is unlikely to ever will be adopted. So that is a problem. And of course, the neighbours have got to pay to have the lights changed outside their houses. So I think it's a big planning matter whereby the planning they could start insisting, as they did in Brookside, to have specific lights, as they do in Oakley Way at the top end of Oakley Way now. It's got specific requirements through Monmouth Housing and the developers. So I think we should be directing more through planning rather than the developers sort of picking and choosing what they put in.
I think you're right in any way that we can inform planning and get the right systems in for whatever it is in these new developments. That's what we should be doing. There are some benefits to us not adopting these sites in that the developer carries on paying all of these costs as well. It's not great for the residents until we adopt areas, but there's a balance somewhere there, I'm sure. We'll work with planning to try and get more of the most up-to-date, not, you know, as Councillor Smith said, it isn't just about the monetary cost of this. Developers should be putting in the best equipment as well for the energy saving as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Carl. Obviously, you've only got a small team and you've got a lot of work to do in that department. Obviously, we've got to take into consideration the climate impact as well. When everything switched over to this new system, just out of interest, because I know Tony mentioned it earlier in the pre-meeting, what lights that we've asked to remain on in areas where people find, or their perception is that it helps with antisocial behaviour, will those still stay on, or we have to report those column numbers back into you?
All of you will stay on unless it's specifically like some of the...
Sorry, I should have said not dimmed, more bright, for instance, or will they all just be dimmed? I suppose that would be better than not having on.
They will be dimmed. We've got two levels of dimming. If for safety, we would keep it on, let's say 50%, if it's on like a speed bump or at a junction. But if it's like in a residential area, it'll be dimmed. But you won't notice it really, to be honest.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any more questions for the officers? No? Okay. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Gareth. Shall we make the recommendation to Cabinet with regards to the length of time to adopt? I'd like to see them. Yeah? Okay. Thank you, Carl. So, members, if you have any further questions on reflection of today, please get in touch with Carl and his team and I'll answer any questions you have, okay? Thank you. We'll just wait for the officers to come in before we move on to item 3. Okay, so we will continue as normal now. So item 3, the performance monitoring of the previous strategic equality plan 2018 to 19. So I'll hand over to Matt and Alan.
Turn the microphone on. To just present to you the monitoring report for 2018-19. So as I said before, this will be slightly out of date, is that it goes to March of last year. But we're looking to try and amend that now and get the 1921 done at an earlier date, so it makes it a bit more relevant. So just to run through, this is the monitoring of the third year of the 4-year plan. And being that it's difficult to know when you're putting stuff in here, how long some of these actions will take to reach fruition or otherwise, quite a lot, or majority of the stuff has finished already. And as such, probably the more interesting information is the sort of good practice and what we've done as an authority through the year. So in terms of the council budget engagement, looking to try and engage proactively with people on the budget process. Some of the good work then done within the community hubs. I'm looking here specifically at page 8 and working down through the document. Our Welsh language involvement with Cymraeg Blant has been particularly successful in Monmouthshire, probably the most successful in the whole of Wales, which seems strange from where we are in Wales. Again, more proactive work from the library service. They do and the hub themselves do a lot of really good work with people from protected characteristics throughout the year. Volunteering, that's our involvement with like the Bridges Centre and the work that Owen Wilson does. Then looking to engage with people obviously with protected characteristics, elderly, disabled, etc. People with dementia. Then the work of Mark Foster then with Disability Sports Wales. We've achieved the Silver Award, looking now to work towards the Gold Award. My Mates, social care, the support for people with learning disabilities to create partnerships, lifelong partnerships hopefully, and that's been a very successful project. So a lot of this really is work that can link in with some of the objectives, but I suppose it's a summary of the work that's on as a local authority. Armed Forces in Monmouthshire, we're doing work with them, Joe specifically, and the officer that works for Monmouthshire Newport City Council, making sure that we are aware of the rights of people, well, veterans I suppose they call them these days, and ensuring they get not preferential treatment, but certainly the certain things that they are eligible for what do they call it now? They call them so I can't remember the word now. I just actually said it a second ago. Looking forward now into the examples of good practice, we had the impact assessment training back in April and March 2018. Monmouthshire Pride event, this is where the youth service are leading in terms of LGBTQ. There were 750 attended in 2018. This year, I think, was over the 1,000 mark, and a 2-day event, which was extremely successful. Work we're doing with our social justice strategy and the loneliness and isolation strategy, which I think has now been agreed and has gone to the PSB for the actions to be disseminated to partners. Care leavers not be charged council tax, trans swimming sessions. We've got the Monmouthshire Inclusion Group has been repurposed. We've got task and finish groups now dealing with disability, and also we're looking at bullying and harassment and identity-based bullying within the schools. Those two groups are going very well at the moment, and are actively looking to try and address some of these issues. Occasionally I'm asked to do equality awareness sessions in social care and other departments. Access for All Forum has restarted if I'm honest, it's struggled a bit in terms of membership. It's very difficult to get people to engage. It was at one stage very successful. It's now dropped off, unfortunately. It's a very good forum for us to disseminate our work and to ask for comments and probably be challenged by members of the public, but we need to consider whether that is viable going forward. GovTech Challenge. Holocaust Memorial Day, another element. The Chepstow and Caldecott community hubs really work hard on making sure that people are aware of these things that happened in the past. Voter SV training, etc., etc. International Women's Day, that's been a successful one. It's been taken up by our sort of senior female members of staff. And then we have our sort of involvement, our engagement then with other sort of local groups and groups that perhaps that we operate ourselves. And then some of the other stuff, equality information, employment information and so on, that we've got to publish. Then we've got our objectives. So if I just briefly go through those. I could have done with a mouse to use this. Where are we? Yeah, so doing the basics, that's making sure that we've got the structures in place to be able to operate properly as an authority under the Equality Act. Educating and guiding, so that's our awareness to staff, our awareness to elected members, and how we communicate them with the public as well. Celebrating, commemorating, making sure that we make the public and our staff aware of a lot of the issues that are prevalent in society in this day and age, and making sure that our staff are aware of those. It's not just celebrating, but also making aware that there's certain things that happened over the years that shouldn't have happened, and that we don't make the same mistakes as human beings. Making a difference, so it's really how we work with partners to make that difference. And keeping our focus, so this is information, this is inclusion group, LGBT group and so on, to make sure that we are actually making a difference in those groups with technical characteristics. And then we've got the gender pay gap report for 2018-19, which we are obliged to report on every year. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the report. Obviously, the next report I'm going to present is the Strategic Quality Plan 3, which takes us on a stage. I think it takes us on a level as well. So if there are any specific questions you'd like to ask about this report, please feel free to do so.
Thank you, Alan. Obviously, you can see you do a lot of hard work. I did attend the diversity weekend in Caldecott, and the turnout was absolutely fantastic. I know a lot of our members are there as well. So I will now hand over to members. Anyone want to any questions? Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Beg your pardon. The Access for All forum that seemingly is not doing as well as it started out, because I saw that as a successor to the CARE system that Jenny Barnes was very involved in. What's gone wrong, do you think? Because the attendance first was really good, the input, the information, yes, there were some people who very strong views, but it looked like being a really good forum, and it's a pity.
Yes, CARE was an exceptional group. Jenny Barnes drove that forward. She had her agenda. She had people that helped her carry that work out. The Access for All Forum was originally a piece of work that Penny Walker did that was funded, I think, was from big lottery funding. It was a full-time post over 3 years, and she really engaged with local people, elderly, disabled, and so on. Yeah, so she pulled that together, and the Access for All Forum thrived under those particular conditions. I think then supported by Jenny, supported by, I think was it Delia for the 50 Plus Forum? Yes. So it was quite a big joint together of these groups to make sure that, you know, people had their voice. Unfortunately then the funding for the project ended, and there wasn't the money then to take on a successor to Penny, and it just dipped. Well, actually it stopped for quite some time. Tony Crowhurst from the Disability Advice Project, I think, has come to present at a council before. has tried to take it over, and he's got some fantastic speakers and a great agenda, but for some reason they haven't taken to that particular redesign or rebadging of the group. I don't know why. Perhaps it's because the leaders, as were, are no longer there to sort of cajole them and lead them towards these groups. I think that may be what the answer is. Oh, yeah, massively. But we'll have to think about some other way of doing it. I was actually talking to Matt earlier, and potentially what we need to do is to go to groups rather than them come to us. So we go to 50 plus, go to the visually impaired group and be part of their agenda rather than ask them to come and be part of ours. That may be the way forward.
You've got to make it easy, you've got to make it comfortable, you've got to make it convenient. And yes, summoning people to us is perhaps not the best way, but it's the working together of various associations, the links that form, that give the real power to these organisations. But thanks for the explanation. Thank you.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Petruni.
Thanks, Alan. 2 questions, if I may, Chair. First is item 30, action 32, page 36. Implement an anti-poverty plan, anti-poverty action plan and programme of intent. Tackling poverty plans being developed in actions by FEDIP. FEDIP is no longer exists. And if you spoke to the cabinet member, the anti-poverty plan was never going to happen, and that a tackling poverty plan is still in progress 2.5 years later. I checked the previous annual monitoring reports. I think the last year's 2016, 2017, or 2017, 2018, and 2016, 2017, if I've got that right, said exactly the same thing. I'm just wondering your views on that, and could we make sure this is updated and changed, please? Because it just, none of it longer applies. The FEDIP no longer applies. Even the language has changed. The other thing is racism. There's hardly any mention of this in the report, although we know, and I'm getting emails from Show Racism the Red Card about, I wouldn't use the word spike, but a good chunk of reporting around racist incidents in schools. And I wonder if you've looked at the data around this, the self-evaluation form that schools have done on the racism angle. For example, 50% of our schools don't do anti-racism in their curriculum. Primary schools seem to have a particular problem, and there seems to be 6 quite serious incidents of race-related incidents. Schools themselves say that 45% of them would like some sort of training around skin colour and difference. And that's just not reflected in the report, Alan. And I wonder what your feelings are on that.
Yeah, if I respond to the FEDIP one first, I will check up on that. I mean, I am reliant on a lot of this information from other people, but I will check that up. And if that needs amending, it'll certainly be amended. As for the racism one, I think that's become more apparent in the SEP 3 because of the work we've done in looking at the evidence from the wellbeing assessment and also from Is Wales Fairer. They've highlighted this. I've known there's been an issue with reporting of bullying and racist incidents in school probably since I've been here. This new SEP 3 is looking to address that. We've got a task and finish group now with myself, Emma Taylor, Richard Austin. We're looking at the best practice or the good practice from the schools that are actually returning forms in, well completed and well documented. We're looking for them to work with us to disseminate that good practice across all of the schools in Monmouthshire. It is an issue, I think. I'm glad, I think Emma and Richard are both glad that this task and finish group has come about because it just gives them a little bit more power to try and address these issues. And hopefully they will be successful. And I think perhaps it's something, I don't know what the issues are with behind schools for not reporting these, I don't know. Whether it's a lack of clarity about what is an incident, whether it's schools being worried that if they do look to try and address these, it'll be regarded that a school has a problem with these issues. But as far as I'm concerned, and probably yourself, they need to be addressed full stop, regardless of what the issues are, that these issues are addressed. So I think Strategic Quality Plan 3 is going to give a little bit more push to this issue.
I appreciate that. I'm pleased to hear there's a task and finish group. I'll return to SEP 3 in the next item. It's the next item, isn't it, SEP 3? I'm meeting with Show Raising the Red Card next Wednesday to push this agenda. If you would like to join me, that'd be great. Because I just feel like, and there's no reflection on yourself, there's no political will to drive this forward, in my opinion, in this council. And it's going to be if you're willing to work with me, let's try and get something done on this. Because it's not just schools. Schools are just one element of this. And I know you're fully aware that there's greater issues in society around Monmouthshire and around perceptions of skin colour. So we need to include the charities in their perspective on this, because they're so far from the monitoring, it's non-existent. It's not even on the radar. So I appreciate your words, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And just to come in on this, and I think, Councillor Petrini, your questions raise the point as well, that some of the information here appears out of date as well. And I think the key thing, and myself and Alan have spoken about this with this monitoring report, it is the monitoring report for 2018-19. I think one of the things we need to be a bit clever at, although it says 2018-19, we know that there are things that have happened in here, and also new evidence that has emerged that isn't reflected in here. And one of the things, Alan's alluded to earlier, we need to make sure that this report comes to members much earlier in the year, and that sort of greater amount of sort of evidence and more both quantitative and qualitative data is in the monitoring report to give you a better quality of evidence as members as well. So that's something we're sort of picking up and will ensure that's reflected in both improving this report before it's sort of finally signed off, but also certainly future versions of the report.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and that completely makes sense to bring this forward earlier in the year, absolutely. But I suppose my pushback to you would be, it depends what you think the report is for. If it's a report to sign off, then it doesn't matter when you really look at it. Do you know what I mean? If that's how it's viewed, not that you view it like this, but if it's just to be signed off that we have to do something, then you could put it any time of the year, couldn't you? And we just sign it off, or we have a few questions and you sign it off. If you want it to be part of a process by which you use as a critical document to hone and improve, then it's got to be much earlier on, and greater engagement than a select committee report, I would argue, but that's for the administration. So I would view it like that if I was. Is it just an annual monitoring, where we just monitor and we sign it off and well done, we've monitored, or is this no? This is a process by which we use it as a critical friend.
Yeah, and Chair, if I just jump back on that, absolutely, it's the latter. By doing this earlier in the year, that means we've got that evidence base, and any revision then of the strategic equality plan year on year can be done in the basis of the evidence, the progress we've made, and we can look to continuously reiterate the actions and what developed as a result of this. So no, it's not just a matter of signing it off, it is a matter of using this, gathering evidence, learning from what works, looking at evidence elsewhere, and then using that to continuously reiterate the work we're doing, rather than using it as just almost a signing off of a document for its own sake.
Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Petrini? Would you like to come up? Okay, thank you. Has anyone else got any more questions on this item? Councillor Roger Harris.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. Question for Alan. You've produced 2 reports here in your name, and there's an awful lot of information in there. Are you, in fact, a one-man band, or do people have to report to you mandatorily at regular intervals, or is it, unfortunately, if that's the right word of it, your job to go out and make sure that they they do it. It seems an awful lot of work for one man. That's what I'm saying.
Interesting question, an observation. No, I've got colleagues in the authority now that I engage with. So they're running projects, they report back to me. Yes, it's got to be the email out saying, look guys, we've got a report coming up fairly shortly, can you give me the information on what you're doing? Sometimes it's a bit of a job getting it back in because, to be fair, they've got a multitude of tasks to do themselves, but I always get the information in. So it's all this good practice stuff is about email out, knowing who's doing stuff, getting that detail back in and putting it into a report. So it's onerous, it's a bit of, it can be a pain, but we got to do it because that's the work we're doing out there. So after about 8 years, you get used to doing it. But it works okay. The process works okay, yeah.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Jamie Trahan.
Thank you, Chair. My question seems rather inappropriate, really, after the last two questions. I've got an aunt who loves to read, and she gets a visit from the mobile library, but they don't always have books that interests her. So is there a way where she can let them know what her interests are, so when they come to her, they got books within her interest range? Is that possible?
Are you happy for me to pick that one up because the library's in my area? Interesting, for the first time about 6 weeks ago, I went out with the mobile library service. Some of you may know our colleague Sue Siraj that works out of Caldecott Hub. So she develops quite a rapport with the people that she goes around. What she tries to do is sort of understand the needs of people and sort of recommend titles. Obviously, it was Monmouthshire Council. Our stocks, they're pretty substantial, but they're not exhaustive. If there are books that people are interested in, and this is a really important service, actually what I say is we can order in from the interlibrary loan scheme. So we're able to draw in resources that are much more significant than just our own local authorities. So that sort of scheme operates around neighbouring authorities, and we can bring in reading material from elsewhere. So I'd say if there's anyone out there that makes use of the sort of the home delivery service, is to have a chat either with the person that comes out to them. If they're able to go online, if they're a user, they can do that via the library information service, or chat to Sue or any of the staff in the library over the phone. Ask about the books they're interested in, and we'd endeavour to get those in from the interlibrary loan scheme. Where there are demands in books, sort of, and we see a pattern for demand, obviously there's a case then to buy those. But if it's just a one-off for more unusual titles, we try and use the interlibrary loan scheme to meet those needs.
Her main interest is UK crime, and she refuses to read anything American for some unknown reason. I've got no idea why. But I think she's asked a couple of times to focus on English crime, but because you do the whole of Monmouthshire, it's difficult to keep track of that. I was just wondering if there's a way you could keep track of that at all to make things easier, and then it might spread across the ward, the county then? I don't know.
You're probably getting beyond my immediate technical knowledge of the library service in that one, but what I'll do, I'll pick that up with colleagues and come back to you with a specific response if I may outside the meeting.
Chairman, I'm not being flippant at all, Joe, but it's quite interesting. You know, there are a number of voluntary collection points, like old telephone kiosks. The village hall in Gwahelog has got the most astounding collection of books now. You might find it quite interesting looking in some of these venues because they're completely uncensored collections. And it's amazing what you find.
Are there any further questions on this item? No? Okay. So just to sum up on item 3. Councillor Petruni asked for a review to be done with regards to referrals to FEDIP and the Language and Tackling Poverty Plan, which, Alan, you said you were going to review. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying that FEDIP no longer exists. Not referrals.
And can I make a suggestion to Councillor Petrini's point number 2 with regards to racism in schools and incidences that he's been, obviously people have approached him on. Maybe it might be worth us setting up a working group, a joint working group with CYP, with Speech Tutor, and we do some engagement with the schools and see what problems are going on out there. Would that be of interest? Yeah? Okay. And Councillor Harris, obviously you made reference, is Alan a one-man band and is he going at it alone? And he said, well, in some way no, but he's obviously working with many different departments. And obviously, Jamie, you raise your concerns with regards to a constituent with regards to the library. Okay. Okay, thank you. So we'll move straight on to item 4, the pre-decision scrutiny for the new Strategic Equality Plan 2020.
Right then, yes. Thank you. So hopefully you've got a copy in front of you. Quite a lot of the sort of corporate stuff is in the very sort of front end of the document about, and we've got a social justice strategy, what we hope to achieve in that, how it links in, national policy context, and then some of the specific duties according to the Equality Act. So the engagement, assessment of impact, equality information, etc., etc. And that's page number 9. Some definitions then of the protected characteristics as defined in the Act. Might be useful to know, and I can never remember all 8 of them, ever. A mention of the socio-economic duty, which is to be coming in fairly shortly, which is looking at areas of poverty. It's something we've actually been doing in probably 18 months, 2 years. So on the budget process, we've been looking at what's called cumulative impact. So the cumulative impact on increases in charges for services, kind of a disproportionate impact on people on low income, and the more money you earn, obviously, less of a negative impact on your financial situation. So it's something we're aware of, we've been looking at and doing some work on. We've actually spoken to the Equality and Human Rights Commission. We had a meeting with them probably about 12 months ago, I guess, and told them what we were doing, and they were very interested in that piece of work because it was something they were actually at the same time were looking to do some work on. Mention of the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act and the principles behind that. Links to other strategies. Obviously, there's a lot of links in with this particular equalities legislation. And then we're looking then at what has driven our evidence base. And we're looking at the wellbeing assessment from the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act, population needs assessment from the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, and then probably the latest then is the Is Wales Fairer 2018. The Equality and Human Rights Commission being the sort of our legislative organisation, they basically look after where we are in terms of compliance, and they're prepared to challenge us if they feel we're non-compliant in any particular areas. So it's a document that we looked at, we felt we needed to look at, and there were areas that certainly appear to ring true for Monmouthshire, that they highlighted as areas across Wales were issues. And we've held a number of engagement events, with a symposium for staff, which was a very enlightening experience. The staff they engaged with, and we certainly gathered a lot of evidence from that. We've met with our Access for All Forum, 50 Plus Forum, and the Monmouthshire Visually Impaired Group. Quite interesting, really. We had quite a number of really good issues that they mentioned and that we certainly have addressed. But quite stark that some people don't quite understand what local authorities do and what our responsibilities are, and they think that we can impact on everything when we can't. So that was quite an interesting dynamic of some of those meetings. These are the key things, the strategic objectives. We've got to have what's called strategic objectives, and then they're underpinned then with actions. So our objectives don't really go, they don't go far from what we've got already, perhaps in our social justice strategy. Objective 1, giving children the best possible start in life, overcoming barriers to attainment and opportunity. Objective 2, overcoming inequalities in access to economic prosperity. Objective 3, creating cohesive communities. Objective 4, provide services that are accessible to our public and support our workforce. Objective 5, create a diverse and inclusive workforce. And 6, and then we were told that this must be in there, is an issue that Welsh Government are looking to address, and the Equality and Rights Commission, is reduce the gender pay gap. So there are the strategic equality objectives. That's on page 16. And then underneath those, I've got the actual ones, and then the evidence, where we got the evidence from. Protected characteristics they fundamentally impact on, and then some of the outcomes we're looking for, and the actions and the responsibility of officers or groups or partners to actually carry some of these things forward. So we're looking at children, young people and families supported to improve their well-being. Just give some examples here. Develop an integrated early intervention prevention pathway. Responsibility head of children's services. Children attain their full potential. I know this is a big issue that people are looking to address. So mapping the current provision to support pupils eligible for free school meals through education achievement service. And this again is a head of achievement and attainment, sorry. And so that objective is underpinned then by all of these sorry, my pardon. My mouse isn't, my laptop isn't working very well there. Where are we? So the outcomes and the actions and the responsibility or responsible officers. Overcome inequalities and access to economic prosperity. So digital deprivation. 1 in 4 adults are in poverty in Wales. 23% of children living in poverty in Monmouthshire after housing costs. Figure is 14% before housing costs are taken into account. Low levels of access to the labour market for people with disabilities. And in Wales, 34.6% of disabled people are not in employment. Lack of availability of buses and taxis. Gender stereotyping in employment. And highest rate of unemployment is 16 to 24 year of age range. And then we have the outcomes underneath and the actions and again the who's responsible. So more people have access to high-speed broadband, increase availability and take up of broadband across the county to address digital exclusion. I think it's Mike Powell has got a project on the go with that, working with companies, I think putting bids into, what do they call that? Sorry, they've had some funding, or they're applying for funding, and they to deal with these. So the, where's it gone? Hang on, I've lost that again there. Digital deprivation.
Yeah, apologies, I'm not familiar with the precise funding pot, but through the Leader Plus scheme, the rural development plan, is that the one you're looking at? Yes. Yeah.
So somebody actually engaged with that at a recent event and said, we're never ever going to get this solved. And I said, well, so I've actually got this guy together with Mike Powell for Mike to explain what they're doing, and hopefully they can both understand each other, and he can hopefully understand that his issue at some stage will be resolved. People to opportunity to raise their household income, so deliver the communities for work programme to reduce the number of people in or at risk of poverty, so through the Youth Enterprise Manager, etc., etc. Create cohesive communities. So there's been an increase in race, hate, crime, increase in identity-based bullying and sexual harassment in schools, loneliness and isolation can have a profoundly negative effect on people, all things that can affect community cohesion. And as I said earlier, or mentioned earlier, having the better data and increased awareness of the effects of hate-based bullying, and some of the work we're doing in that task and finish group. When I say task and finish group, it's a task group. How long it's going to take to finish, nobody knows, but it'll go as long as it can make a difference, and hopefully we get some sort of resolution with some of these issues. Service accessible to our public and support our workforce. So this is something I've been pestering for ages on, and not just here, in my previous role, about making sure that when we communicate with the public, that everyone can hear us and can read what we produce. I go to some presentations and you see the PowerPoints up on the screen, and apart from these, I've got good eyesight and I can't read anything. I can't read them. And it's making sure that people, if they come to a meeting, can hear and can see stuff. So, and not just that online as well, or whatever particular sort of forum they're attending, making sure that we're aware of things, and making sure that people can have a say and can see stuff and hear stuff.
Could I just say, Chairman, that's a really valuable report, because a lot of the people that suffer don't say anything.
No.
They just sit there, and it goes past.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd say that.
No, that's a valid point.
Yeah, I think some people, they don't want to stand out, perhaps. That's what it is, and they feel a bit embarrassed about saying things. But if you can't hear something and you need to hear it, or you can't see something and you need to see it, it is important that we're aware of that and can try and address those issues. So in terms of supporting the workforce, 26% of adults in Wales report poor mental health. Disabled people are 3 times more likely to report mental health issues, and 1 in 5 women suffer from postnatal depression. It's something we're aware of. I've just joined the Health and Safety Forum now with Lawrence, and we're looking at, we're losing a lot of staff time to mental health issues, to stress and other associated factors. How do we lessen the impact of that? If we can lessen the amount of people going off with those issues, we're reducing the loss of money to the authority. So it's a win-win situation if we can be cognizant of the problems that these people are facing and trying to address them. So ensuring that we consider our diverse audience when we communicate as a council. So the national principles of public engagement. Providing a fully accessible website. Actually, I met with the Monmouthshire Visually Impaired group probably about 3 weeks ago, and the initial comment I had back from the chair was, I can't read your headings, because the headings were in bright emerald green on a white background. Because his eyesight is so poor, I said, you're absolutely right, I didn't think of it. We'll change it to black on white, and he said, that's great, I can see them now. So it's just little things like that. And also I think it makes, it's good that we're consulting with people and that you come back with these sort of issues as well. So it's something I learned on the day. Unfortunately, I can't get rid of the green on this particular report for some reason. It's black on green, which is better than white on green. So I'll just run through very briefly. Create a diverse and inclusive workforce. One thing that is Wales Fairer says is that a lot of local authorities aren't reflective of the makeup of their society or our population as such. So we're quite an elderly elderly county, but it's not a massive diversity, but we're not a massively diverse workforce either. So, we need to be aware of the fact that we've got, again, probably what you're going back to earlier, is we've probably got staff who are disabled but don't say they're disabled for whatever reason they feel they can't say. But that a more diverse workforce hopefully give us a more diverse idea about the services we can provide and the need for them. Sorry, I should have brought my mouse with me here. So finally, it's reduce the gender pay gap in Monmouthshire. And this isn't about sort of equal work for equal pay. The reporting says now where there's not a massive gender pay gap in Monmouthshire, but I think having met with the Equality and Human Rights Commission, what they're more concerned about is the fact that of gender stereotyping, whereby a certain, like a woman will be a carer, a man will be a fireman or whatever. It seems to be that we sort of follow these gender stereotypes and perhaps don't diversify, and then give women the opportunity to have better opportunity to earn more. I don't know if that's explaining it properly, but sometimes the path you go down because of the gender stereotyping actually leads you to going into a caring role rather than a, say, management role. It's not exact science, but we're looking to try and do some work on that. So, contribution towards the breaking of the cycle of gender stereotyping. So we're going to publish the annual report and look at the alternative ways to recruiting staff to break down the barriers of gender stereotyping and understand the gender pay differences in our organisation. So that's the draft one. That's going to council now. I think it's next week. And I'm open to any comments, any amendments or things that you think can go in there, any changes or tweaks. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. So hand over to members. Have you got any recommendations for Alan on this paper? Councillor Petruni?
If you're a one-man band, Alan, I've always liked the tune that you've produced. There's a lot of holes in this, in my opinion. Probably too many to mention at the moment, so I'll stick to a few. First off is the Cabinet members' opening gamut with 5 bullet points. One is which is embedded poverty as part of impact assessments undertaken on all, and that's the key word, all council decisions. That's not accurate. I checked even last Cabinet last week on the budget. You would think that'd be the place where we would check poverty, and it wasn't there. Only one impact assessment, I think, out of 13 did it. So that statement is just not true. It's not embedded at all. Second, developed cumulative impact assessments. You talked about this, I believe, on different households. That's great. Where is that work? Where are these assessments? Where are those calculations? What policies are included? How are they calculated? Maybe I'm just unaware of it, but I haven't been directed to these cumulative assessments. That sounds very interesting, and it says developed past tense by the Cabinet member. So I presume they're all in place and they're all working. So I would look forward to seeing them in action. So if you could send them to me, that would be great. On the poverty bit and the cumulative impact, they are one and the same, I would assume, but I don't know how you're assessing. I don't know the benchmark by why you're assessing them. For example, it says embedded poverty. We haven't defined poverty in this council. So what are we talking about? What's the measure by which we're assessing this? The Cabinet member just puts poverty, thrown it in there, but there's no measurement. Last time I saw a paper by this council, I don't know if you were in the meeting. I don't think it was your paper. It was another officer. I can't remember who it was now. It was defining poverty, and then I read the whole document, and it was the only thing it did not do. So how are we embedding something we can't or haven't even measured or defined? I would look for your views on that, or the Cabinet member on that stuff. So many things missing. Nothing in here in homelessness, even though it's part of the Equality Act. Not a single thing on homelessness. I feel like bar humbug. You did some great things. There's some great stuff here on disability. So I don't want to be completely negative. Well, I just feel like there's a lot of things missing from this. It just feels like, again, it feels tick boxy. We need a strategy plan, a quality plan. Let's just write the keywords in there. It'll sound good. And then when you put it under scrutiny, it's not there. For example, there's no there's no analysis of improvement. What didn't work in the last strategic equality plan? What did work? Not there. The gender pay stuff is good. It's much wider than that. It's. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the paper I drafted. Have a glance. There's huge disparities just across the county. Gender would be one variable, absolutely, but there's loads of others. So objective is focused, admittedly, so which is good, but really doesn't capture what's happening in Monmouthshire. The council, last full council in January, passed an income equality grant, not mentioned in here, and that was cross-party. Well, the cabinet member was part of those discussions, so where is it? So if you're not aware of that, it just makes me even more concerned. So the cabinet member's not obviously speaking to you. There's no updates. It's all just, and I don't think it's entirely you. I think there's no political will here to really be on top of this and to drive it forward. I could go on, Alan. I don't want to go on, but could you please look at addressing some of this, because it's just, I just feel a bit flat.
Thanks for your comments. Impact assessments, I can't remember all the things you mentioned there, but I'll try and pick up some of the ones I can answer, if that's okay. Impact assessments, or the FG assessment, poverty, cumulative, yeah, we have, that's in, I'm sure that's in the council, the report to council with the budget. I'm sure that's in there. If I can find it, I'll send that to you, because yeah, cumulative impact doc. Yeah. I think it was a final budget document, but Matt will know where that is, because he's helped to author that one. And in the impact assessment process, poverty is mentioned on there. We did that in advance of the socio-economic duty coming in. I'm not saying it's got massive status, because it's not got a legal status as yet. But we have been aware of it, and we've looked at it.
Alan.
Yeah, go on,
I appreciate that. And if the cabinet member had said we're implementing, or it's in some policy, I would totally understand. That would make complete sense. But she says in all, that was her own words, all policy decisions. That's in her opening gambit. And I just looked at the cabinet papers last week, and it's not. Could you also tell me how we're measuring poverty? That would be great. Because if it's in our assessments, then surely we know what we mean. Because if we don't know what we mean, then it's completely pointless. Check the cabinet papers. It's in one of them. Yeah, page 59 of the last cabinet papers is the only one to do with poverty as a checkbox characteristic. The others don't. You can double check me, it's all available. And I'll quote you exactly what the cabinet member says. Embedded poverty. Embedded means it's in every single one. All council policy decisions. That's what she says. You've just told me that there's a different template.
It may be the template rather than the current.
That might be the case. That might be the case, but I'm not claiming it's embedded.
Okay, thank you. Alan will check that one.
With this document, we looked at the evidence. The evidence didn't present itself as being a massive issue in Monmouthshire. So we tried to look at the issues that we're addressing possibly in partnership. And funny enough, it's not even in is Wales Fair as being an issue in Wales. Whether that's compared to the UK, I don't know. It was, to be fair, it was mentioned at one of the I can't which one. I think it was the 50 Plus forum. No, it's the Access for All forum. They mentioned it there. So it's something we can have a look at.
Could you? Because I speak to Newport colleagues, and what appears to happen, and I have admittedly, no hard quantitative evidence of this, but what appears to happen is that younger people who struggle with homelessness, they don't tend to stay in county. They tend to move to Newport where there is provision. For example, there's no provision in the south of the county, I'm led to believe. I believe there is someone in Abergavenny. I look towards Abergavenny councillors. There is some church, I think, in Abergavenny that caters it. Yeah. But in the south of the county, there is no homeless provision. And so what happens is they turn up in Newport. Right, I'm not having a go about that. That's perfectly the logical thing to do. But that doesn't mean we don't have a problem. Does that make sense? Yeah, I can speak to you. So maybe me and you have a conversation about other things, because I don't want this meeting to go on forever. But I would suggest, given this is the strategy till 2024, on our current term ends, 2022? I think that's the next elections. I could be wrong. It needs to be bolder than this. It needs to be bolder than this. And, if we're serious about this agenda, and I believe many people are, on a cross-party basis, then, as the Cabinet Member again puts here, the lowest funded local authority in Wales. So it accepts that as a norm, but actually, and I've, again, in my document, that doesn't have to be a norm if we base it on inequality. If we base it on poverty, we're going to always have the same discussions of being lowest funded. If we base it on inequality, income, then we have better conversations. So see why the strategy equality plan shouldn't integrate that point and make it another objective. And then underneath all that, you can include all the inequalities around income and so forth, and have such a body of work that if we integrate it into our plans, we can go to the Welsh Government and say, look how bad it is. It's in our strategy plans, it's in our social justice plans, it's in a poverty plan that may ever be produced. Do you know what I mean? That's why I've just...
Are there Councillor Eason?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. At the meeting previously, the questions were asked about sickness levels, and you're now talking about looking at it with Lawrence Dawkins on other matters. In the audit meeting last week, audit committee, the comments were sickness levels were an average 11.5 days per full-time employee in the year March 2019, blah, 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 blah. The question was asked in audit, and audit weren't able to be provided with the answers. But the same question was asked in strong communities some while ago, and the answer has actually been provided to us in the last week. I don't know whether you can comment on it. I did pass this on to Wendy Barnard. This was the note that came through. And a member asked about the cost pound of 11.2 days. They say 11.2 days is actually either that or 11.5, absent per FT employee. It was explained that this would be a complex and very time-consuming to produce a spot-on accurate figure which was accepted. This is the same question asked in audit last week, and audit weren't given the answer. The answer is a midpoint salary from the MCC pay scales equates out to £3.12 million a year, 11.5 days absence, or 11.2, whichever is the correct one. Will you have any comments on that when you meet with Lawrence Dawkins as to equate what of those 11.2 or 11.5 days absence equates to stress and other things like that? Because somewhere also in the papers it shows that Monmouthshire is pretty high across Wales for absence levels generally.
I don't know about that particular point, but I know that, because it was something I was interested in from a personal perspective, was you know, the cost. And I think it was something like 20%, something like 20% of the sickness was due to stress-related issues.
So we're talking
so
about
20% of 3 million is a lot.
Just about a million, roundabout.
750, something like that?
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
What can we do to reduce that? Because I also asked the question in audit as a number of employees who may not be well, who don't come to work and work from home. How is that equated in the sickness statistics? I think it's important that staff, when they work from home, have got to be fit to work from home. They're just as fit at home as when they're in work, but not to use that time at home if they're not well. There's got to be an equation somewhere to find out what effects home working has on employees who don't come to work because they're not 100% fit, or they wouldn't come to work because they don't want to pass on a bug to somebody else. There must be a cost to people working at home, an added cost to the £3 million.
Can I just come in there? Tony, I think that's a question better off being directed to Sally Thomas in HR rather than Alan. It's kind of putting Alan on the spot.
Lawrence Dawkins, in general terms, about that sort of effect on absence monitoring. That particular pass. Yes, Sally would have a bigger answer, but nobody to that question in audit last week.
Yeah, I was going from the perspective of, due to austerity, due to our settlement, are we getting, at what point do we get that we're so thin on the ground that that's having an impact
That's the other aspect,
on the
yes.
staff currently there? So what's the balance between, you know, staff levels reducing, stress levels increasing, and if you invested more back into there, would you see that go down with it?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's
That's where
correlation. I that's not a question for me to answer or perhaps to pose, but I'm just wondering sometimes, is there a tipping point where you say, well, actually, hang on, guys, you know, there's more people going to go off with stress-related issues. You know, at what point do we start saying, well, if we start investing a little bit more there, this actually comes down? You know, look at the scales. It was just a question I asked that I thought, I don't think anyone would have had the answer to, but I was just trying to make it sort of an awareness point, I suppose.
I don't know whether you can build it in, but there are a lot of people that are away sick and continue to work. So they're off sick, but maybe they've broke a leg or whatever it is, but they continue to work. They can't go into work, but they continue to work and on their sick list because of legislation and all that sort of thing. It's a grey area. This is. I mean, my son at the moment, he can't. He's waiting to go in for an operation. Theoretically, he's off sick. He's working every day because of pressure of work within his particular industry. They feel they can't let go. So it's a very grey area here.
I suppose it's one of the vagaries of agile working, in that, you know, you may not feel you want to pass something on to somebody in work, but actually you can still carry out a day's work, so therefore you don't impact on your sick record. I agree with you, it's a grey area. I mean, probably better answered by Sally, but I've known people say, well, I don't feel particularly well today, but I can still work from home because I can still function. You know, is that a good thing, bad thing? Does that skew the figures? Potentially, yes, it does. Is that a personal decision? Don't know.
Okay, there's a few questions. I think I'll send an email on behalf of the group to Sally that both Councillor Eason and Councillor Dovey have raised today. I'll send that email tonight. But like you said, it's if you can work from home, you know, it's being flexible. So are there any more questions for Alan? No? Okay, thank you. So you scrutinise this paper. Councillor Petrini has raised some valid points and Alan has kindly agreed to come back to Councillor Petrini. Can I ask that you copy myself and Hazel in on that response as well, please? Okay, thank you.
This is going to council next.
Thank you all. Sorry, Alan, were you going to say something? The next meeting date is the 12th, so I will see you all then, and that's at 10 o'clock, is it, Hazel?
Yes, it is. Can we just say that...
One moment, can you just give Hazel a
On the
minute?
12th of March, there's a meeting in the morning, but we've got some training that several members are planning to attend with me in Caerphilly, which starts at 1 p.m. So I believe we should be in good time closing the meeting on the 12th of March so we can attend that. And just for anybody who's wishing to stay at 5 o'clock tonight, we've got an LDP workshop, so that's open to all members.